I lost a part of myself when Lauren died. We had been together for 5 years, married for almost a year, when a red truck slammed into her while she was walking to work. They say the driver had fallen asleep. I kept dreaming about her last moment, even though I did not witness it myself. The truck speeds towards the sidewalk. There's nothing anybody can do but watch. And just before the moment of impact, time freezes. Lauren is frowning, phone in hand, unaware of the approaching danger. Her thumbs hover above the phone screen. The truck runs her over, and I wake up screaming. It was the same nightmare every single night. Soon after her death, everything else in my life started collapsing, one by one. I started drinking heavily, lost my job, fell out with my parents, avoided my friends, crashed my car. The list goes on. I was in a dark place, and people around me were faceless shadows. I didn't care about anything anymore. That's when they noticed me. I don't know exactly who or what they are, but I'm pretty sure they were circling around me for some time, like vultures. I started noticing these odd people. They were watching me from a distance at first. They looked sick, with pale skin and dark circles around their eyes. There was always at least one of them wherever I went. On the street I live in, or outside the grocery store, or on some balcony looking down, following me with their tired eyes. It was a Sunday, I think, but when you don't work, every day is a Sunday. When one of them finally approached me, it was a bony old man. He still had a few patches of gray hair holding onto his scalp. He looked like a walking skeleton with skin attached, swimming inside a shirt that was a few sizes too big. At first, I thought he was going to ask me for money.
"Don't answer their questions,"
the old man said. His voice was weak, but I heard him clear enough. "What are you talking about?" I asked. The man didn't answer. He stared at me for a long moment with his gray, clouded eyes, and then just walked away. Fast forward a few days. I was sitting in a bar, drinking away my savings, when another weird guy took the seat next to me. He was a large and round man in a black suit, the polar opposite of the old dude that gave me that cryptic warning. My brain struggled to think if I'd seen him somewhere before. Maybe he was at the funeral? He chose the seat next to me on the counter, even though the bar was pretty much empty.
"Vodka,"
he said to the bartender.
"and a drink for my friend here, too."
I thanked him.
"What's your name?"
he asked. "Jonas," I said. "You?" He smiled and extended a beefy hand, and by God, that thing was huge. For a drunken moment, I thought I should just shake his forefinger like a baby.
"You can call me Lou."
Lou was bloated like a balloon animal. He wheezed after every sentence, and it looked like there was another man underneath all that fat, trapped and struggling to breathe. After a few moments of sitting in silence, Lou asked,
"Would you like to speak to her again?"
"Excuse me, what?"
"With Lauren,"
Lou said.
"What would you say if you could speak to her again?"
I stared at him, stunned. Perhaps he was one of her clients, I rationalized, or just someone she knew. Still, I thought it was an odd question. "You knew Lauren?" I asked. Lou licked his lips and repeated the question.
"What would you say if you could speak to her again?"
The barkeep was polishing the counter, and I followed his hand motions, mesmerized. My thoughts kept drifting to Lauren, the truck, the suddenness of the death. I sighed. I never had the chance to properly say goodbye. You know what was the last thing I said to her? I complained that we were out of milk. Could you imagine that? Fucking milk. Lou nodded. I felt something change as I finished the sentence. I became somehow lighter, physically. Maybe finally talking to someone about it triggered some sort of relief. Or perhaps it was just the alcohol dulling my pain.
What if I told you that you could speak to her again?
He said. I raised an eyebrow. What? Are you some kind of medium or something? I don't buy into that shit. Lou forced a slight smile. He was going around the rim of the glass with his giant index finger. Then he turned to me and cleared his throat. The voice that came out of his mouth was not his own. My heart jumped. It was Lauren. Her voice was filled with panic. Jonas? Jonas! My jaw dropped. What the hell was that? Ventriloquism? I almost wanted to respond to her. I felt as if she was really there in front of me. I jumped to my feet and grabbed his jacket. You fucking with me? How did you do that? How did you copy my wife's voice? I said. Lou chuckled.
Calm down, cowboy. I didn't copy anything. It was Lauren.
The barkeeper shot me a warning glance. I sat back down, trying to calm myself. Lou was silent, watching me. My head was racing. I realized that I was squeezing the glass hard. I was seconds away from smashing it over his head. Lauren's dead, I said through clenched teeth. Now, you have 5 seconds to explain to me how you did that, or... Lou put up his fat fingers defensively.
Okay. Easy. It's what I do. I offer my services to people who need them. For a price, of course.
Prove it then. Prove that it was her, I said, realizing that I desperately wanted it all to be true.
Doesn't work like that. First, you gotta answer our question, and then you get to ask. Okay?
I noticed the weird shift to our, but that was the least unusual thing about this man, I guess. His deep-set blue eyes looked at me, unblinking. Fine, ask away, I said.
Do you dream of her?
That's your question. Of course I do. Every damn night. I sighed and took a sip of my drink. I dream about the accident. I see the truck. I see her. And I think if she wasn't holding her phone that maybe she would have noticed the truck coming. I try to warn her, but in the dream I have no voice. I'm powerless. Again, I felt an odd sense of relief, like weight coming off my body. The bar stool beneath me felt somewhat harder and uncomfortable. Lou smiled and waited. It was my turn now. All right, I said. A few days after we got engaged, Lauren told me a secret and she swore me not to tell anyone. What was it? There was no way anyone would know that other than Lauren. No way. Lou opened his mouth, and for a moment, there was nothing. But then her voice came again.
When I was 17, I killed my dog, Coco, on accident while reversing out of the driveway. I was scared and told my parents that a car ran over him and that I found him like that.
I stared in disbelief. It was her. It was Lauren. I felt a jolt of excitement for the first time in weeks. I raised my arm to call for another round of drinks. The movement felt so weird. Then I noticed it. My right hand was thinner than before. Way thinner. The bones on the back of my hand were more pronounced. My other hand, in contrast, looked normal. I rotated the scrawny hand in front of my face, staring at it in confusion. When I pulled back the sleeve of my jumper, which was sagging more than it should, there was another surprise waiting. The forearm also got significantly thinner. It dawned on me. I looked back at Lou. "This is the price?" He nodded. There was silence for a while as I took it all in. The barkeep didn't seem to notice or care about the weird thing going on. His eyes were glued to his phone most of the time, his thumb endlessly scrolling up. Then came Lou's next question.
"Do you think you'll ever meet someone like her again?"
If I answer, I thought, he will take another part of me, but I wanted to hear her voice again, badly. I fought with myself not to answer. Lou repeated the question. "Stop asking me," I said. "I don't want your services anymore." Lou just kept repeating the question over and over like a robot, pausing after each one to wait for the answer.
"Do you think you'll ever meet someone like her again?"
I stared at the array of bottles behind the counter, trying to ignore him. I could sense a tiny bit of frustration in his voice each time he repeated the question. Lou then paused and opened his mouth wide. Out came Lauren's voice again. She was sobbing.
Jonas, babe? Why won't you speak to me? Jonas!
Lauren, I said. My heart was in pieces. The fat man closed his mouth and stared at me. "No, I don't think I'll ever meet someone like her. I don't want anybody else," I said. The feeling of lightness took over me again. When I shifted my weight, I felt like half the man I was a moment ago. I looked down to see my jeans getting baggy around my thighs. A small price to pay to hear her voice, I thought. "Now, let me speak to her," I said. Lou nodded and opened his mouth.
"Jonas?
"Lauren, where are you?" I asked.
I don't know. It's a cold place. I'm scared, Jonas."
"I love you," I said.
"I love you too. There's something I need to tell you, but I forgot what it was. It's important. I know it is."
What is it?"
"It's difficult to think here with all of these cats constantly fighting."
"Cats?" Lou interjected.
"That's enough for now."
I frowned at him. "Let me speak to her, damn you, whatever you are. What was that about cats? Where is she?"
"Answer our question first,"
said Lou. He smiled. He had me in his palm, and he knew it.
"Would you like to visit her?"
We stared at each other for a moment. "What do you mean?" I asked.
"I mean what I say. You visit her, have a chat, come back."
"Visit her where?" Lou paused and then repeated the question.
"Would you like to visit her?"
I wanted more than anything to have a chance to talk with Lauren again, but some part of me screamed not to do that. I wasn't afraid of losing more muscle and fat. It doesn't even hurt. Hell, I could live as a fucking skeleton for all I care, if only there's a way I could be with her again. Lou kept repeating the question, hunger gleaming in his eyes. Just one word, and I would be with Lauren again. I was about to say yes, but before I could mouth the word, the screen of my phone came to life. It was a text message from Lauren. I grabbed my phone and stared at it in disbelief.
"Don't answer their questions. Stop talking."
Panic and confusion started seeping in, but I knew that I had to listen to Lauren's warning no matter what. I did my best to ignore Lou and tried to pretend he wasn't there. It was difficult. Lou was repeating the question over and over. I didn't say anything. I didn't turn to look at him. When Lauren's voice came again from the man's mouth, pleading for me to come and be with her. I covered my ears with my hands. It was the longest hour of my life. At least it felt like an hour, but I don't know how much time actually had passed. Eventually, Lou got up and leaned close to my left shoulder. The last thing he said to me was,
"We'll meet again. 2 more times."
He went to the front door, and I turned around to watch him exit. Bright daylight flooded the bar, and for a brief moment I could see a crowd of people outside. Living skeletons in sagging clothes, some even missing an eye or an arm. They waited for Lou and tugged on his sleeve pleadingly as soon as he stepped outside. The door closed, and the bar was pleasantly dark again. The nightmares are now gone, and my body recovered eventually. It took a while, but the muscle tissue grew back. The only thing that didn't revert to normal is my right hand. It's still bony and dry. I hide it with a glove whenever I can. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed that, please consider subscribing for more. I've been your host, Tom, and until next time, stay sleepless.